This is Grolnok the Omnivore. And even though he's not out for a couple weeks, this is why my friends already hate him. So this is Grolnok the Omnivore. He's not out for a couple weeks yet. He just got spoiled in the Crimson Vow spoilers here 3 or 4 days ago, as of the time of recording. So he's not out for a couple weeks yet. My friends were kind enough to let me proxy him in just to see how the deck works. And I don't think any of us expected what was going to happen. So casting costs and other stats aside, the really important part here. So, okay, whenever you have a frog you control attacks, you mill 3 cards. Okay, well, so Tribal Frog is really weak, and we'll get into that. However, whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile with a croak counter on it, and you may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own and exile with croak counters on them. This was the part that really caught my eye, and I'll tell you why here in just a minute. So the way Grolnok really does work is the whole stuff going from your library to your graveyard bit. Now, there's lots of ways to do this, and we'll get to them. But the whole point is that you have the ability to take these cards and set them in exile with croak counters, and then cast them later on. What this represents is essentially an expansion of your hand that is, in many ways, a lot more difficult to deal with. Like, yes, they can scrub Grolnok off the board. He's only a 3/3, and he's just a creature. But once you get him back out, you have access to all the stuff that you've exiled. And over the course of the game, you're going to be able to exile an awful lot of things. And all these cards are going to sit there in exile, waiting for you to cast them. Now, cards in hand is one thing. You can always lose those to discard or to things that reshuffle. But all this stuff just sits out there, and you get to decide what they are, for the most part, and when you're going to play them. And like, it's one thing to have a hand of 15 cards no one knows what they are. It's another to have a hand of 7 and like 12 permanents out there just waiting to come back. So as far as frogs go, in Magic, right now, there's 31 frogs. Of those, 20 of them are in blue-green, and there's 8 worth playing. 8. Unfortunately, I don't have a frog Hemoth, despite buying a couple boxes of the last set, the D&D set. I just didn't get any. So the 7 I am running, because this is a frog-themed deck, and you need to understand that I have to have some kind of dumb in my decks to make them fun. Spore Frog and Haze Frog are both the kind of things that defensive stuff. Like, when you see why, you understand why this deck has to get defensive. Plaxcrest or Frogling will give something with a +1/+1 counter. Shroud, which is always helpful. Species Gorger, it's a big fatty, and you have to pick something up every upkeep, but that's okay, because after all, I'd like to be able to pick up my Haze Frog constantly and cast it over and over again. Anurid Scavenger has an upkeep cost of putting a card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, which helps out when you see why. Omnibian just taps to turn things into a base 3/3 frog. So if something big's attacking you, no, it's not big, and it's not flying, and it's not whatever, it's the frog now. And Trollbred Guardian is a relatively inexpensive, fairly combat-y creature. I would have Frog Hemoth in here, but like I said, I didn't have one. And the deck definitely needs more offense overall. So when it comes to ways to get cards from your library to your graveyard, there's straight up mill, and then this route I chose to take was the weird kind of choose 'em cards. So while Mesmeric Orb, people hate Mesmeric Orb, believe me, dude, you want to lose friends, build decks around Mesmeric Orb. You will not get invited back next week. But cards like Fact or Fiction, and not Gifts Ungiven because you can't play that, but Epiphany at the Drowned Yard and blah blah blah. You reveal a bunch of cards off the top of your deck. You or someone else will get to choose like which pile you're going to get. And then one pile goes in your hand, the other pile goes into your graveyard. But because they came right off the top of your library, Grolnok sets them all off, the permanents at any rate, all off into exile. So as the game goes on, you get to vastly expand your hand because all the stuff you didn't choose is still completely available for you. With the straight up mill, these are the cards I ran in the first version of the deck. It's getting a bit of a retool here. they'll hopefully be a lot better when I have the real card in hand to play as my commander. Mesmeric Orb is far and beyond the best one in there. It's a 2 casting cost artifact, and whenever a permanent untaps, its controller mills a card. Now, you think about how much stuff, like you play 2 or 3 spells in a turn and you activate something, and you attack, and then come your upkeep, you're untapping 12 permanents. Grolnok really likes to see that. He really likes to see that. And then after that, Milliken and Deranged Assistant are they're both mana dorks, and they both mill a card when you play them. Winds of Rebuke is a bounce card that everyone mills for 2. Worry Beads makes everyone mill for 1 on their upkeep. Okay, big deal. Charmed Pendant is a really weird one. You tap, and you get mana equal to the colored mana symbols on the card that you mill off the top of your deck when you tap it. So it's a little iffy. Like, you probably ought to get 1 or 2 mana out of it, or absolutely nothing if it's a land. But then Grolnok can just let you play it. Not a big deal. It's a little risky, but who cares? Windborn Muse, during each player's upkeep, they mill for the number of cards in their hand. So if Grolnok's... I've got 7 situational reaction cards in my hand because all the permanents I'm using are sitting on the table in exile. I get to add to that pile. Foster... So whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 1 and then mill until you hit another creature and put that card in your hand. So the deck's a little light on creatures, and it's a dry run, give me a break. But all the land you hit is going to head straight off into exile, and if you run into a card like Gaia's Blessing, which is, it's in here, it will kind of have to be, everything else can get shuffled back in. And then Tolarian Serpent is this big, weird 7/7 creature that makes you mill for 7 during your upkeep, and normally that would be a bit of an issue. But as I said, I've run a Mesmeric Orb deck, a multiplayer mill deck before. You really only need like the 1 Gaia's Blessing to keep you from milling yourself out, and then there's all the other kinds of ways you can do it too, right? But each of these will help continually add to that pile of stuff you just are waiting to get around to play. The choice cards, they all do pretty much the same thing, or some variant of it. Reveal some cards off the top of your library. You or someone else chooses a couple of these to put back in your hand, and the rest go to your graveyard. The fun part is that you are forcing someone else to decide what's going into your hand and what is going to sit there on the table and wait and show up later. And watching them have to make these decisions over and over again, that was actually a lot of fun. It's like, well, I can give you these, but no matter what I do, I know for a fact that's going into exile. It's such a dumb idea. I love it so much. One problem I decided to nip right in the bud was how to deal with all of these lands that are going to wind up going into exile. And seeing as now blue-green is the color combo for ramp, out comes all the goofy cards that let you play more either from your hand or just generally play more. Right? Exploration, as soon as it let you play additional cards, Scale the Heights lets you do it. The 3 blue-green cards and Explore each draw you a card, and then let you play some more. And Summer Bloom, which, I'll be honest, I've had a set of Summer Blooms since I pulled them out of packs years ago. I've never played them. I know all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're going in a deck, pal! You waited a long, long time for this, and now we're going to use you and abuse you as much as I can. And if you're wondering what all that land is for, well, this fat bastard's in there. And considering I managed to consistently play 1 to 3 land a turn, the retool is going to see a lot more landfall. Not quite sure what, but it will. But I hear you asking, Dub, how do you stop blowing your entire deck away? Well, we went a little overboard with that on the first try. To be honest, I think 9 cards was way too much. A lot of them I didn't even really play. Gaia's Blessing is the most important one because when it goes from your library to your graveyard, you just reshuffle. Looks for Mortality is a bit of life gain, and it can sit on the table and wait. So it can quest for Ancient Secrets. That's those 2 definitely. Psychic Spiral lets you reshuffle as an instant, and you mill someone for all the cards that went back in. Blessed Respite is a fog with the same ability. I think Dwell in the Past, Remembrance, and Regrowth are probably going to come out. Like, as much as I've been playing Regrowth in every green deck I've built since I first got one a long time ago. It's just too slow, right? There's between the blessing, the elixir, the spiral, the respite, and the quest. I think I don't need any more real shuffle in. I might find a couple other cards I don't know, but this is definitely going to get changed. For cards that are going to go in after the retool, Altered Dementia is definitely one of them. Even had my friends suggest that one. I can either sack my stuff to mill myself and further my board state, or just generally sack things to keep them from being exiled and permanently. Like if I lose the Rampaging Baloth, that guy's never coming back, and my deck loses an awful lot of punch. Vivian lets you cast creature spells as though you had flash, and it doesn't say from where. So, being able to cast something out of the exiled pile at whenever I need it, that's definitely going to be a lot better. Hedron Ruin Crab, I could run. They're very small, they'll come out early. And I can either mill myself or mill someone else, depending on what's going on. Sage of the Beyond lets you reduces the casting cost of stuff that's cast from exile. I'm going to cast a lot of stuff from exile. The problem is I only got one, and it's currently in a Vega the Watcher deck. So I either have to buy another, or I don't want to move them between the two. It's kind of irritating. The deck is going to be a lot more fun the next time out. And whatever you think of it, if you think this is a shockingly stupid idea, or at least one that's mildly entertaining, feel free to let me know down in the comments. When more Crimson Vow spoilers come out and give me more dumb ideas, I'll see if I can't build them too. And I'll see you in the future.